Welcome to the Beer Channel. I'm John Starodumsky, and today I have something special planned to review. I alluded to this earlier today, posted on my website, that I was going to review a six-pack of Bigfoot Barleywine. So people probably would ask themselves, why in the heck would you want to review an entire six-pack of Bigfoot Barleywine? It's a pretty strong beer. It's almost 10% alcohol by volume. It comes out every January, actually. And here it is November, and I'm about to plow into a six-pack of it. But this is no ordinary six-pack that I'm going to be reviewing and tasting tonight. What I actually have is six bottles of Bigfoot from 6 different years, starting with last year's 2011. Came out end of January, early February 2011, going all the way back to the 2006 version of Bigfoot. What I'm looking for here actually is to see what the effects of age is on these beers. Bigfoot doesn't really change much from year to year. When it comes out, it's a very hoppy, extremely hoppy beer. It's about 100 IBUs actually. Some of that, of course, is balanced out. A lot of it's balanced out by the malt. It's a very, very malty beer, very, very malty style of beer. So that's what I'm looking for, to see how the beer has changed over time. In a big beer like this with loads of hops, lots of alcohol, and a big malty brew, if it's kept properly, it should actually it should change. Maybe it will improve. That's what we hope for. But you never know what's going to happen and how the beer is going to develop and mellow over time. Normally, when I age beers, which I do like to do quite a bit, the hoppiness will mellow over time, and the malt may be a little bit more pronounced. And we'll be looking to see if that's the case. As I said earlier, they don't change it a lot. I was taking a look at the bottles, and going all the way back to the 2006, the alcohol content is pretty constant. It's 9.6% listed by volume on this beer. Of course, Bigfoot is the classic American West Coast barley wine style ale. Barley wines actually they're an English style. They're usually the English versions are a lot milder. They're lower in alcohol. You might get 6.5%, 7% or so. I think of Old Nick from Young's as one example, and I don't think that tops 7% alcohol by volume. But of course, when Americans grab a style in the modern microbrewery revolution, they like to make it bigger and bolder and add more alcohol and hops to it. So that's what actually Sierra Nevada has done with Bigfoot. It's not the first American barley wine. That honor goes to Anchor's Old Foghorn, which is a lot closer to its English forebears. It's actually higher in alcohol than I think it's about 9% or so, Old Foghorn, but it's nowhere near as hoppy as Bigfoot is. So I'm ready to go. I've got a glass of water to sip in between samplings, and obviously I'm not going to drink 6 bottles of beer back to back, but I do have 6 separate glasses. Most of them they're sort of an incongruous lot, but I've tried to collect some nice stemmed glasses with a sort of a wide mouth that I think will allow the beer to best display its character. So again, I'll be decanting a little bit of the brew, starting with the 2011, and since that's the youngest, and we'll go back from there, and we'll taste a little bit of it, and we'll go on to each one. So let's get started, and I've got the 2011 here, and I'll hold the cap up for you. Again, that's the most recent brew. I've got a bar blade here. Pop the cap on the 2011, and this is the first one for this. I have this is a classic Augsburger wide mouth stemmed glass. This is one of my preferred glasses in my collection. I've actually kept these refrigerated constantly. And I should note too that I actually was going to wait till 2012. The earliest edition that I bought was the 2007, and of course I've been buying Bigfoot for years now, since the 90s, and I always pick it up when it's released. But starting in 2007, I would take a bottle and stash it away in my DBR, my dedicated beer refrigerator, and I just left them there. So I got to the 2011, which gave me five versions, and I was going to wait till the 2012 till I had a six pack of Bigfoots. And our own Red Rooster actually was kind enough to send me a bottle that he had in the 2006 that completed six bottles for me, and so that's why I'm doing these today. So this is the 2011, of course, is the youngest, and even though I say youngest, of course, it's got about a year on it, almost, probably about 10 months now. So very malty, Brady nose, and some peppery hops in the nose too. Yeah, and this is less than a year of age. I would still consider this very young for Bigfoot. It's a little chocolatey, a lot of caramel, but the malts up front quickly yield to the hops, and they're very resiny. They really emerge in the finish, and because this beer hasn't had time to age for a long. You know, there's really a long, dry, bitter finish still on this beer. You can tell that it's 100 IBUs. I mean, you know, not per se, I would take a sip and say, hey, that's 100 IBUs. But, you know, you can tell that that's a very, very hoppy beer. And there's a lot of alcohol warmth in the finish, too. This is definitely a sipping beer. It's not a beer that you're going to usually drink 6 bottles of, but anyway, that's the end of that bottle. So let's cleanse the palate a little bit. And let's move on to the 2010. If you can see that. And we'll get our trusty bar blade here and we'll pop the cap on the 2010. And for this one, I have a bulb-shaped New Belgium glass that I'm going to use. Good carbonation. See that creamy tan head on there? The 2010, the hops, just get the same very chewy caramel type malt in the nose as the 2011, and a little bit of the peppery hops, but they're a little bit more restrained than they were in the 2011. As I would that is what I would expect. This one's going on 2 years of age now. Got that same chocolatiness, but a lot of caramel. And the chocolate's very, very, very light. There's just tinges of the caramel. And then there's those hops again. This beer has been aging 2 years, but it's still really a hoppy beer. As with the last one, they intensify in the finish. I don't think they're quite as resiny. There's still a resiny character to them. They're a little piney. There's some notes of fruity notes, maybe some bubblegum type flavor. But there's that long, really long, dry, bitter finish on the 2010 as well. I'm liking this one a lot. Again, it's essentially the same beer. It's just, you know, this is just the effects of time on it and proper aging. You need to cleanse the palate a little bit. Again, I've got a glass of water from this. Some people prefer to use crackers. You can buy saltines. No salt saltines, probably the best to keep your palate honest. Okay, and now we'll go to the 2009. So again, this was January 2009, so we're closing in on 3 years of age on this beer. Bar plate, I'm running out of space here. Okay. For this one, I've got my Heineken Tarweebach. Actually, most people know Heineken for their Pilsner, but they make Tarweebach is a wheat bock, and it was actually sold in the U.S. It's still sold overseas, but I bought this probably 15 years ago. It actually was an excellent beer, so this is one of the prize glasses in my collection too. It's not going to quite hold the entire bottle, but that's okay. And as with the others, we've got that beautiful chestnut color, creamy tan-tinged head. There goes that malt again, but I'm getting a little bit more yeasty esters this time. This one is a little more bready in the nose than the others, and there's some fruity bubblegum flavors here, or aromas, I should say. Yeah. So now, again, we're looking at about a 3-year-old beer, and it's still amazing how hoppy this beer is, even with 3 years of aging. I think the caramel is really starting to come out in the beer at this age, but there's just so much hop bitterness in this beer that it doesn't. I think about beers like Rogue's Old Crustacean, and I've aged that a couple of years, and I think the bready flavors really come out more, and that's a pretty well hopped beer too. But here, going on 3 years, I'm getting I'm getting some more of that bready malt in caramel up front, and it's lasting a little bit longer, but the hops, they emerge about the same point, but just a little bit less intensely. But in the finish, there's really still that a little less of the resiny character, but the long dry bitterness on the tongue is really lingering there. That's a keeper. All right, and now we're going back to 2008. Where were you in 2008? I don't know where I was, but I can tell you this bottle of Bigfoot was in my beer refrigerator. Let's see. This was actually in 2008. This was the 25th anniversary of Bigfoot. So doing the math, that puts the first release of Bigfoot at 1983. I think the old Foghorn goes back to the 70s. So again, they did beat Sierra Nevada out, but this is the classic West Coast. And got this German stemmed glass for this one. Engelhart, never had this beer, but neat glass. And my palate, which is still kind of got that bitterness floating all over it, is telling me that I didn't take a sip of water to cleanse it. So we need to do that. And look at the head on that. 2008, so now we're back to almost a 4-year-old beer. Okay. Well, the nose is a lot quieter on this. I'm not, a little bit of malt, but the peppery hops are almost gone from the nose. I'm almost sticking my nose in it. Let's take a sip. Yeah, there we go. So now the bready, that bready, chewy caramel, maybe a little raisin, that's really starting to pour through. So the malt is really starting to come on here. The hops are, again, the lightest ever of the four we tried, and no surprise there. That's just what we expect. But they do finally emerge in the finish. Again, we've got some piney, lingering hoppiness in the finish. It's a little bit more restrained than the last one, and that's been the pattern. Each beer is a little bit milder in that category, but really I still get that after a couple sips, that lingering bitterness, and that's pretty amazing. A beer that's 4 years old to display a hoppiness like this, and that tells me that this is a beer that can age a lot longer, more than probably the next two years, which we're going to be looking at in a few minutes. But I wouldn't be surprised if kept properly, this is a beer that you could keep bottles of this for 10 years and it would still be fine. It's a little more chocolatey too. Okay. And now the 2007. There we go. 2007 Bigfoot. We're now looking at a 5-year-old beer. A little less carbonation, a little less of a head on this one. I'll beat it up a little bit. And that's an old Stroh's signature glass. You do. Cleanse a little bit more. Okay. And I think, let's see, nose is softer still. So again, the beer is starting to mellow finally after about 5 years. Caramel, not much difference actually from the 2008 here. It's pretty amazing after 5 years that this beer is still as complex as it is. I mean, there's just like so much going on still. You get all. I mean, I keep talking about the common themes here, but it's it's the same ingredients and pretty much the same beer year after year. But it's still got it's maltier, but this one actually might be hoppier. I don't know why, but I think this actually is hoppier than the 2008 still. And you'll always have variations from bottle to bottle, but it's just 5 years in this beer, and it's still really a hop monster. Maybe even a little more peppery than the last two. All right, so now we're on the last one, and that's the 2006. This is a 6-year-old beer. And I have a Einbecker Erbach glass for this one. Drink some water. This one's got the fruitiest nose yet. There's some dark malty notes, and I'm getting some raisin and prune in this one. Yeah, it's probably the fruitiest of all of them, all of the years that I've tasted tonight. A little bit of caramel, a little bit of maybe more of the chocolate starting to come out a little bit more in this final one. The alcohol has become a little bit more. It's almost got like a jet fuel burn of alcohol in the finish, and the hops are finally a little bit mellowed. And that jet fuel alcohol type burn sometimes is a sign that, you know, the beer is just about at the peak of where it should be. I still think you probably could age this further. It'd be interesting to see what would happen. If you actually have the self-control to do it. It was tough for me to hang on to these for as long as I have. Then more power to you. I don't know that I could wait longer. But it seems to me, out of all the beers I've tasted tonight, all the additions of Bigfoot, I think 5 years to 6 years is probably the optimum. But that's still amazingly how how good this beer is. It's just, it goes to show that, you know, most beers are best enjoyed fresh, but there are beers too that, just like wine, will improve with time, and the Bigfoot is certainly one of them. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I know I've got my work cut out for me. I don't think I'm going to make it through all 6 bottles of this. If I do, you may see me on tomorrow reviewing hangover remedies. But in any event, I'm about to post this shortly after I get done with it to YouTube. So if you're in Canton, come by and help me drink this stuff. There may not be much left, though. It's darn good. So I'm gonna try and make my way through as much of it as I can. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this little review, and you'll come check out our website, brewguru.com. Drop me an email, brewguru@brewguru.com, and cheers.